Now it's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation.
What are you people? On dope?
Where you can toke.
I inhaled frequently.
Or you can talk.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
Or you can toke and talk.
10 federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
While we talk about toke on Toker Talk Radio.
So, by the way, when it comes to pot, if you're 40 years old, you live in a log cabin in Oregon, you got 12 giant pot plants in your backyard, have a ball.
Live from beautiful Portland, Oregon at Rolla J Studios.
Hey, this is great. Yes, not cannabis.
Plus your calls live at 971-533-7111.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel? Gateway theory doesn't work. It's a reality.
How is it real? Don't tease me.
We're locking up people that take a couple of puffs of marijuana, and the next thing you know, they got 10 years.
And now, here's your host, the guru of Ganja graphics, the sultan of sativa statistics, and the worst nightmare of a reefer mad prohibitionist. A polite, perspicacious, productive pothead with a propensity for PowerPoint. Radical Russ Belville.
Hey, good day, Tokers and Tokettes. We're live from Smyrna, Georgia. I'm Radical Russ, hanging out with Timmy, Big Daddy Fink in the house. Here, I'll give you this one.
Woo, Timmy!
Hello. How's it going?
How's it going, Timmy? Good to see you, bud.
Hey, good to see you.
So, over on this side, we've got guests, too. We've got Kaliko in the house and GanjaJon.
What up?
What's up?
How you guys doing?
Aloha, everyone.
So we got a full house all over the place.
Russ, Tim, how you guys doing over there?
We're fantastic. It's our last day in Georgia, and Kaliko and John are in the studio for our every Wednesday strain review segment that we had planned, without me forgetting to unplan it for this Wednesday. But hey, I understand you're reviewing strains anyway.
Yeah, we pretty much review strains wherever we go, so it's actually just convenient that we brought ourselves here to the studio this time around. So yeah, today we actually brought some Blackberry Kush from Brightside, obviously the dispensary that I'm running over at 1010 Southeast Powell, right next door to the Hot Cake House, just off the east side of the Ross Island Bridge here in Southeast Portland.
One of our premium sponsors here on 420radio.org.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, we brought a little quarter ounce of buds today that we'll be enjoying, but I know Brian got to sniff and got to take a look.
It's got some excellent terpenoids.
Yeah, that's some of the best smelling bud I've smelled in a while, actually.
Yeah, well,
it's actually funny. This stuff is really great smelling, and it looks great as well. But we're actually doing this as a special at Brightside right now for $25. Eighths of $25 makes it $50 quarters. We're gonna do ounces of this stuff for $175 for a limited time, as long as it lasts. So I mean, it is great, killer, fire Blackberry Kush, but it is currently available now for only $25 an eighth.
That's premium.
Yeah. Trying to make it easy on our
good,
patients,
man. Very
sure.
good. And I understood that the Oregon Health Authority did their first round of licensing, but you guys weren't in the first round?
Yeah, not in the first round. They've only processed 50 applications out of the 289. I believe they denied 22 and conditionally approved 20 more. Only released 8 of the actual dispensaries that were approved. So we're still waiting to hear back. We weren't in the first batch, but hopefully we will be in a batch here at least in the next week or two. They said they're going to continue to release them each week as the time wears on. So
yeah, fingers crossed, man. I'll be out of the job. So will Kaliko and a lot of other people. Including other dispensaries, if it doesn't go through. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, because I think Kaliko and the crew over there offer a better product. That's why I carry my stuff there. So
yeah, we've been really lucky to have GanjaJon over, obviously at Brightside, carrying most of our concentrates are all done by GanjaJon. Just got some new AFCU in from him today that looks amazing. We had some San Diego cat piss in last week. It was a limited nug run, and we had people just coming through the door to pick that up.
Very limited nug run.
Brian managed to make his way in and grab some of that, so we were pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, I took a dab of that before I let it go to the dispensary, and so it was kind of sad to see it go, but I've been saying, like, all my friends ask me, where's your oil at? I don't have any. Well, why not? You make oil, don't you? Like, yeah, but it's at the dispensary. Go get it there. But, yeah, I mean, that's just been kind of the thing. It's been pretty nice to have people have access to my meds and come up to me and tell me, you know, and hit me up on Facebook and tell me how great the meds are. Because it was usually just me getting you high, Russ. So,
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
now, so nobody got approved that was in 1,000 feet of Brightside, though.
Nope. We're still in the clear on that. I think ultimately we're going to be okay.
Isn't that something that some of these shops are worried about because it's like a first come first serve thing?
Yeah, it's a first come first serve thing. Some people, within 1,000 feet of a other registered dispensary, a lot of people have closed down because they're within 1,000 feet of a school. So there's definitely a lot of shifting going on here in Oregon and in Portland more specifically. So it'll be really interesting to go forward and see what happens. But ultimately, I'm very confident in our application that we turned in everything we needed to do. We're being above board and that we're going to be compliant. So I have all the faith in the world that we're going to be just fine, even if it takes another week or two. So
yeah, in my experience, like people that I was even talking about working with, just closed their doors because they knew they weren't going to get their license approved, so they didn't even bother applying. So the ones closest to my house all closed because they're close to an elementary school, and a few have closed because they know they're too close to a bigger dispensary and they couldn't afford the application fee or something like that. But I've heard all kinds of stories. It's been pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And now, GanjaJon, I don't know if you saw my retweet that came out where the result or the testing results from the Secret Cup were released, and out of 34 entries, 29 of them were over 500 parts per million for butane. Damn.
Yeah. It's not surprising. As time goes on, our testing gets better, and Steep Hill is really on the edge of that. And, a lot of people were upset. 500 parts per million, though, it's not a ton. It's not something that you should necessarily be worried about. And what they were actually coming up with was pentane, and pentane is in every canned lighter fluid. It's in the stuff that people call quote unquote food grade that they buy from gas companies or stuff like that. But there's pentane in it, and the boiling temperature of pentane is over 100 degrees, and a lot of people are leaving their oil or their shatter in their vacuum ovens under 100 degrees for a long period of time to preserve terps. So there's kind of a trade-off. If you want a really tasty oil, you're going to have to go with a lower temperature. If you want a really clean shatter, you're going to have to go with a higher temperature, but you're going to sacrifice terps. So there's always going to be a trade-off. But the boiling temperatures of those things are different. So eventually people will figure it out. And I'm personally was excited about it because I was working with somebody who entered the Secret Cup who got dead last with 800 parts per million, and if everybody's testing at stuff like this, my last test for that Cannabis Cup was 121 parts per million, which at the time was one of the lowest that they'd ever tested. So it keeps the science keeps changing. The machines are getting calibrated better. They're testing for more hydrocarbons, and it's getting pretty interesting. But my biggest hope is that all these dab tards don't turn into real tards in the next 20 years and get MS or something like that. Something that happens where they're not going to be able to recover from all this ingestion of gases.
Pain, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, Kaliko, I saw when you were showing us the sample there from Brightside. I mean, it comes in this container that's Ziploc that's kind of sealed. It would be a little difficult for a kid to get into, but you can see through one side of it. Aren't the new rules being proposed by OHA going to force you to have to change containers?
They're proposing a lot of rules regarding edible packaging right now, and they have proposed some child-proof packaging.
Essentially a pill bottle.
Yeah.
It has to be resealable, and it has to be child-proof,
yeah.
Which that doesn't happen with the plastic clamshell design that everyone's using right now for the edibles, bigger edibles anyways.
Right. But yeah, most of the packaging rules have centered around edibles lately. I know there's been some talk about rules regarding actual flowers and stuff like that, but most of them, they've been talking about just edibles and having opaque packaging that they're not able to see and have child-resistant stuff. But they haven't really delved too much into the packaging of flowers. I know that's something that they do in Colorado and that they recently just required with the new Amendment 64 law that had passed. But, they're having a lot of trouble meeting the demand in Colorado with, child-proof packaging because they went and they announced this rule, which nobody was prepared for, even manufacturers. You have this packaging rule that's being brought up for the 1531 here in Oregon, which would require opaque packaging for edibles. Well, there's nobody out there making opaque packaging for edibles right now. A lot of that is going to be stuff that you're done if you're a bigger company and you get packaging that's made specifically for your product. There's not a lot of people who are making opaque packaging. So, a lot of these rules and regulations are coming out and they're being written by politicians and staff members who frankly don't understand what it's like on the ground.
They don't live in this world.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not understanding how tough it would be to actually meet those regulations. So there's going to be a lot of leeway.
I think a lot of them do understand how tough it is.
Sure, and they're trying to make it.
And they're trying to, in a certain sense, put small businesses.
Sorry to interrupt. Just for a quick second, it's 7:10 out here on the East Coast. Just to let you know.
Yeah, well, I'll catch up with that, Dab. But
all right.
But I think that this is also advantageous for a lot of politicians' friends who are getting into the cannabis business.
Yeah, that's very true.
Who have this money to push out these small businesses. So I think that there's certain people who are ignorant to it, but I think there's some smart politicians out there.
There's no doubt about that.
Russ is hitting his vape pen.
Yeah.
Actually,
yes.
I was going to say, Russ, I actually brought in a vape pen that I wanted to show you today. I'll save it for next week, but I'll just kind of preview it today. But there's this company called Fly Pens that's been out there that we're carrying, and this is a 4-in-1 globe kit, which basically comes. It's the same style as like those Micro G vape kits, but it comes with a globe on top of it. And so this has been really popular with all the kids out there.
It's actually similar to the one that Russ is using.
Dabbing,
it looks like it's got a bigger battery, probably has a longer charge.
Yeah, well, and FlyPens actually does a lifetime warranty on their batteries, but on Wednesdays at Brightside is our Wax Wednesday, so every time you, or if you reimburse for a gram of oil, then you get 25% off any of these FlyPen products. So this one's actually a 4-in-1. It's the globe, it's an e-liquid chamber, it's got a dry herb chamber, plus just a regular Micro G style vape pen. But normally these are $100 at Brightside, but we're doing 25% off on Wednesdays if you reimburse for a gram of oil, and they come in gold and they look good around your neck. So come check them out.
Yeah, and I think for wax,
what I've been promoting too a lot is that Brightside is also open. They're freaking open during the morning.
We're definitely we're open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. We're definitely open a couple hours later than most dispensaries in town.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it convenient. We realize a lot of patients have to get medicine before 11 a.m. and some people have to get medicine after 7 p.m. So.
Well, I think Russ was referencing his attempt to wait outside of a dispensary until they open, and when it says open at 10 and then it's open, the guy's not there till noon, and
that happened to you, Russ?
Correct, Russ?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You sat outside of a dispensary waiting for them to open, and they weren't open.
Well, you take the bus somewhere, right? And so you're kind of stuck where you end up after you take the bus.
Oh,
and,
Jesus.
Yeah.
Did you check on Weed Maps and Leafly before you went? And that was.
I checked their hours. They just weren't open.
Oh my gosh.
That's what's great.
Funny.
But that's what's great about Brightside. Because
Kaliko, before we go on the OHA thing, is there any update on the stupid rule to not have anything that tastes good?
It is a stupid rule, and from what I'm hearing, they're still going to be able to move forward, and it's probably going to be another 6 months before we hear anything really definitive on compliance checking on that stuff. So they're still trying to work it out. I don't know. From what I'm hearing, we're still carrying medibles at Brightside.
And in the meantime, I'm going to start making the GanjaJon soda for the masses, so we can work that out to where it's not sweet.
There you go. GanjaJon does have some really great soda out there. But we carry LB's edibles, and there's these gourmet, amazing edibles that we carry on the show. But they come in packaging that you can see through because, well, they're gourmet. Like they're pound cakes, and they're awesome like coffee cakes, and they're stuff that you want to be able to look at, and that's what sells them is that they look beautiful. And it's a bummer because they're trying to do this to stop kids from possibly eating sweets, forgetting that adults eat sweets. I'm here in Russ's studio, and there's a huge thing of candy, a huge bag of candy right here. I know it's crazy, but adults actually do like sweets. And for the patients out there who can't smoke because they have whatever respiratory problems they have, edibles are a way for them to be able to still get their medicine. So for all of the anti-pot people out there, all the prohibitionists who talk about like how marijuana is not a medicine because it's smoked, we're trying to get medicine to people in a way that's not smoked. So it's sad that you guys are still trying to cut us off at every angle, and really it's the patients getting the shaft. It's sad.
Exactly. And, law of supply and demand still kicks in. Somebody's going to make the edibles. Is it going to be someone who's regulated, and is it going to be packaged and labeled, or is it going to be a brownie in a wax paper with a rubber band that the kid finds? It's a ridiculous rule, and I'm glad that they're going to take another look at that. Before we go, I want to thank Kaliko and John and Brightside PDX. And we're going to do this each week, except we'll do it earlier. We'll do it at 3:45, so it's in the first hour podcast replay, but it's going to be our regular strain review and discussion segment with people who know far more about weed than I do. I'm more of a stats guy. But these are the guys that are growing it and processing it and selling it, and we'll talk more about that every Wednesday here on the Russ Belville Show. Coming up next, we've got Major Neill Franklin from the Southern Cannabis Reform Conference. His presentation there, where he had wonderful things to say about 420 Radio and my presentation, and I just wanted to share. So thanks, guys, for showing up, and we'll see you live in the studio tomorrow.
I missed this, Russ.
Yeah, thank you, Russ. We appreciate it, man. It's good to be
Keep coming back in. We'll have fun on Wednesdays.
Absolutely.
Wednesdays will be wild.
All right, Russ.
Wednesday.
You and Timmy take care out there.
Mahalo.
All right, well, we've still got a couple of minutes before our break to fill. So what do you guys want to talk about? Show off anything else?
I'm down to I haven't dabbed yet if we want to get that up. But I don't know. I also have these vape pens here that I guess we could talk about briefly. Have you tried one of these out, John?
I haven't tried the disposable vape pens.
Yeah, these are disposable vape pens by a company called Pop Naturals. They're actually using CO2 extracts to do it. And the problems with not the problem, but the things that I've found is that a lot of CO2 oil doesn't actually have a great taste to it. This stuff actually does have a decent taste, and it still gives you that buzz that you need. And they come, like John was saying, they're disposable. They're $30. They come in sativa and indica.
Now, are these the flavored ones?
They're not. There's no added flavor. This is. It tastes
okay. Because I have had CO2 extracts where
I could talk about flavored. Added flavor bullshit all day. We'll wait till next week.
Hey, all right. We'll have you guys back next week.
We got to get GanjaJon back on a podcast. He's got a few things he's got to say.
Well, we're glad to carry it here on 420radio.org once you get up and running. So, hey. And look, we got a studio. Why don't you come on down and use it sometime, brother?
Yeah, I've changed quite a bit. I'm now covered in tattoos, and I don't care about anyone but my patients.
Fucking excellent.
So the only thing that's changed is he's covered in tattoos.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, so this is Toker Talk Radio. I'm Brian the Red. That's Kaliko, and that is GanjaJon. We are just hanging out here, having a good time, getting ready to bring you some footage from Major Neill Franklin, and but looks like it's close enough to 420.
Well, looks like we better get to it then.
Yep.
All right, so we're gonna do some strain review testing here, and then come back with Major Neill Franklin. Stay tuned, everybody.
Hello.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Henry Miller once wrote, "An ordinary man is involved in action. The hero acts, an immense difference." Our next speaker has been a hero on both sides of the war on drugs. For 33 years, Neill Franklin served on the Maryland State Police Department, where he led multi-jurisdictional anti-narcotics task forces and ran training for the Baltimore Police Department. After seeing several of his law enforcement friends killed in the line of duty while enforcing drug policies, Neill knew that he needed to work to change these laws that cause so much harm but do nothing to reduce drug use. Since his realization about the failed policies of the drug war, Neill has become a member of LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, where he is now the executive director. Neill has crusaded for the end of prohibition for all drugs, citing how the harms of prohibition far outweigh the consequences of drug use. I first met Neill at the Peace Caravan in Atlanta a couple years ago. I was surprised at how welcoming and open Neill was. I asked him how he got involved with LEAP, and he told me a story of his partner being shot and killed in a failed drug buy. I watched his face as he told me about losing his dear friend and partner, and became mesmerized by the fact that a former cop would speak out so vigorously about putting an end to the prohibition of drugs. From countless interviews with countless marijuana activists and advocates, anytime Neill's name is mentioned, there is a sense that he has become the face that could change the minds of the nation on drug policies. Howard Woolridge, a founding member of LEAP and current marijuana law reform lobbyist, said, "If we could have more Neill Franklins in the fight for marijuana and drug policy reform, this would be a short battle." Neill Franklin was a hero in protecting our communities for 33 years. Now he is a hero in speaking out about the harms of prohibition. He is a hero through his humanity. It is my honor and great pleasure to introduce Neill Franklin.
Oh, you guys are great. I didn't say a word.
You've said plenty over the last few years. Thank you so much.
Wow. Love you guys too. You know, first of all, I appreciate the welcome here. I appreciate inviting me down here to wonderful Hotland. I'm tired of the Northeast and the cold and the snow. And it's just a pleasure to be here in some warm weather with some warm people. You know, there's a lot to be said about the hospitality of the South. You know, there's a lot of truth to that. So thank you very much. Sometimes when I speak, I forget to do some things because I'm thinking so much ahead of what I want to say and all the things that I want to cover. So I made a couple of notes here to make sure that I do what I should do. I think most of you know about the organization that I currently speak for, as Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, as Greg gave the description of. You know, there's thousands of law enforcement professionals, not just here in the States, but around the globe. We have branches in 6 other countries now. We're currently opening up additional branches. We've got a team over in the United Nations right now at the CND, Convention on Narcotic Drugs. They've been over there for a week, pushing an amendment. One of our great speakers, Jim Garrett, drafted an amendment to the United Nations Treaty on Narcotic Drugs, the 3 treaties, beginning in 1961. And basically what that amendment will do, and you can find it on our website, so I suggest you go to leap.cc and take a look at it. But what it will do is allow every country, member state of the United Nations, to formulate their own drug management policy, which will give them the option if they want to keep prohibition, they can, but you know what, if they want to do what we're doing here in Washington State and Colorado, you know, they can do that. And they would have the option to do that. So, LEAP is kind of like spreading its wings a little bit, and we're starting to grow, and we have more law enforcement folks signing on board with us every day. I was looking at the numbers the other day, and they just, you know, every week there's more cops and judges and going to our website and signing on board. You know, and a lot of that is not just about what we're doing, but it's about the message that you are spreading also. You know, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how well we're doing and some of the things that we need to continue. and what I'm seeing. So share lead with your circles, within your circles of influence, with your friends and your family. You don't have to try to explain to your friends and family about ending drug prohibition from a law enforcement perspective. Let us do it. We've got some great videos that you can just pull up on your smartphone, your tablet, your laptop, and show people. There's a great video of Peter Chris, who's one of the co-founders of LEAP. It's about 19 minutes long, and there's also a shorter version that you put out there too, with some words to it. But in those 19 minutes, man, he hits it. He hits every nook and cranny from a law enforcement perspective. And let people like him do that for you. A little bit about me, because another area that I forget to cover is how somebody like me, who was trolling the streets looking for folks like me to arrest anyone that had anything to do with illicit drugs. So I assume that people know, which is the wrong thing to do. I assume that people know how I made this transition. Greg touched on it a little bit when he introduced me. But I just want to briefly cover that a little bit more. Yes, I've had over 3 decades in law enforcement. I spent most of that in narcotics enforcement in the state of Maryland. I worked undercover. There's an article in Vice magazine that this wonderful journalist did on me, and I talked extensively about some of the things that I did undercover. And I'm taking a real beating on that in the comment section and on Facebook regarding that from my fellow Maryland State Troopers. But I tell you something, some of those troopers got the crap beat out of them on Facebook by folks like you. Woo! They started speaking about things that they had absolutely no knowledge of because they stay within their own little spheres. And they failed to reach out. And they failed to interact with other people. They failed to do research in this area. They just failed to talk about it the way it needs to be talked about. And yeah, they got their butts handed to them. So I thank you for that. So after doing all of this work in law enforcement, when I retired from the Maryland State Police in 2000, I went to work for Baltimore. I had become the head of training for Baltimore. And within a few months after my retirement, a good friend of mine, Ed Toker, he worked undercover for Maryland State Police for many years. And he was working a case with the FBI down in Washington, D.C. Safe Streets campaign. And he was buying cocaine from a mid-level drug dealer. And this drug dealer, this was, first of all, this is going to be the final buy of cocaine from this guy. Before we took him down, the FBI had a takedown team in place, and Ed's car was wired with video and sound. And because this involved a little bit more money, a little bit more weight, this guy decided, okay, I'm going to rip Ed totally off. I'm going to rip this drug dealer off. He didn't know this about it. I'm going to rip this drug dealer. But the nature of this drug dealing business out in the streets in many of our communities is it's not the average business transaction. When you're going to rip off another drug dealer, you have to take some serious and dramatic steps. You have to kill him. Because if you don't, then you're faced with retaliation. Then you're faced with violence. So when the drug dealer came back to the car, Ed's car, where Ed was waiting, just a few moments after that, he just reached over and shot Ed totally at point blank range from the side of the head. So that night, when many of us went to the hospital where Ed was taken, it seems like most of the cops were, I mean, there's only one or two ways that you were going to go as a police officer, as a friend of theirs, as a co-worker. There's only one or two ways. Either you're going to go out there and push harder and lock up more people who had anything to do with illicit drugs, and you could hear the conversations. You could hear the conversations days, weeks, months after. But then there was a small group of folks. One who was another good friend of theirs earlier. Her name is Lee Maddox. She's a captain, retired captain from Maryland State Police, and she's one of our board members. So she was one, and who eventually, you know, as the weeks and days go by, we're talking about what's wrong with these pilots. What's wrong here? We're losing people. Initially, we started thinking about the cops that we were losing. But then, as time went on, you know, we started paying more attention to the other people who were being slaughtered. You know, I initially thought about Marcellus Ward, who was a Baltimore City detective who was killed back during the time I was working undercover. Just 2 years after Edward was killed, I had 2 Baltimore City police officers gunned down by drug dealers. Well, one gunned down by a drug dealer in the streets of Baltimore, another one had his car ran by a drug dealer who was fleeing the police after he had shot his competition. But then, in 2003 in Baltimore, there was a family of 7, the Dawson family, mother, father, and 5 kids, who lived in the corner of her home on Preston Street on the east side. And the mother, Angela, was doing what we want citizens to do, work with us, the police, to get the drug dealers out of your neighborhood. She had a drug dealer and his crew right outside of her house. He was there all the time. And she feared that her boys would be recruited into that business, which is a very deadly business. She didn't really fear they would become addicted to drugs. That wasn't her concern. Her concern was them being involved in the game and then being murdered. But she was working with the police, and this drug dealer found out about it. So he felt that he had to send a message. And early one morning, he set their home on fire and killed the entire family. But you go from city to city to city to city, and you have drive-by shootings and running gun battles. There are war zones. We in the police refer to those areas as the front lines. You know, in the trenches. We use that terminology that we use in war. So despite what we hear from the Kevin Sabbats of the world and others who are saying from the Office of National Drug Policy that we don't use that term anymore, drug war. We shouldn't be using that term anymore. Folks, it is a war. It's a war against people. It's what war is about. You have drug dealers fighting drug dealers. You have cops fighting drug dealers. It's a war, and you use guns and use violence at every turn. The strategies and tactics that we in law enforcement use are those that we use in the military, even the weaponry and the gear. And my county just latched onto a surplus military helicopter. Let's do that. So it is war. And so it was me having that experience that caused me to pause long enough to take a different look at this. And it was just shortly after that I stumbled across Lee's new website back in around 2003 and sent in my email address because I want others to be with me on this. I don't want to be out there by myself. You know, at least you feel secure in numbers. And that's when I started communicating with Jack Cole and some others and started speaking officially for the organization in 2008, still while I was a police officer, while I was a commander. And the only reason I gave up law enforcement is to be the director of law enforcement against prohibition. So I wanted to make sure I covered that. So, you know, I've been chastised in the past about not giving that, not covering how I got here. So I want to talk briefly about some things, about what's going on. I want to talk about, and I'm glad that Russ gave this. I mean, this man is a genius with statistics. If you were sitting there and not taking notes, if you didn't copy down his website and the code for downloading it, you need to do it right now. And I'm going to talk about why. But I'm glad that he did that because I don't have to cover statistics. And I can just talk about where we've been, where we are, and from my perspective, what we need to do. Because the fight's not over, folks. We've only just begun. We've only just begun. So, there's been a lot of hard work. There's been a lot of hard work for us to get to where we are now. And it's about collaboration. We really started moving forward on this issue of ending the prohibition of marijuana when we started collaborating at a meaningful level. We all come to this from different places. We all have different perspectives. We all have different wants. But there's one thing that we all want, and that is to end the prohibition of marijuana completely across this country, in every state. And that's what our common goal is, and that's where we need to be pointed and focused, like a laser. The collaborative efforts that we've had in the past to get us here, like for instance, who are some of those organizations? Normal, obviously, a great leader in this. It has been a great leader in this for many, many decades. Marijuana Policy Project, SSDP, LEAD, ASA, DPA, Moms United, ACLU, NAACP now is even on board with this in many states. And there are many, many other organizations. I'd be up here for 2 hours going through all the organizations. But it's the collaborative effort that has got us here. Let's go back and look at 2010 briefly. California, Proposition 19. I don't view that as a failure. Not at all. If there's anyone here who used to be in the military, and if you think back to World War II, a lot of what we did with the offensive was one of the things that you have to do when you're land on the beach, you have to soften the beach. So your Navy is pounding the beach with shells and artillery to push back the enemy. That's what Proposition 19 was. It started a lot of education on this issue. We started building collaborative efforts. That's when the NAACP came into the effort. That's when it started to become a civil and human rights issue, not just about wanting to smoke marijuana. That's when, from my perspective, that's where the momentum really started picking up. And because we became close, people saw, oh, wait a minute, we can do this. And there was a lot of last-minute efforts there. So people were thinking, why don't we plan this out a little bit more? And I'm a firm believer that if we had not done what we did in California in 2010, Colorado would not be where it is today, neither would Washington State, because they would have been the guinea pigs. And they may not have made it without Proposition 19. Momentum is so important, and we can't afford to lose it. We cannot afford to lose it. In whatever you do, whether you're talking a sporting event, I always like pointing to when the Ravens won the Super Bowl. Okay? And the lights went out, and during halftime, they had the momentum during the first half, and things were rolling pretty good, lights went out, and all kinds of problems. Came back in, they lost momentum. And they almost lost Super Bowl. So what do we have to do in order to maintain that momentum? Number one, we have to continue to work just as hard as we have been working. There's no time to relax, take a break, or whatever. We have to arm ourselves with information, do those things that we need to do. I'm going to talk about just a couple of things, because what you guys are about, what this is about activism. That word, active. You've got to be active. You're active in coming here in participating in this. So what are some of the things that we have to do? Obviously, we have to continue to educate those within our circles, those within our communities. And I touched on that briefly when I began to speak, how we do that. Sharing information, making sure that you have the facts. The facts. Yes, it's emotional too, but you can't dispute the facts. And Russ, again, does a great job with that. I use his facts all the time, and he's got some new ones up here that I'm going to latch into and use. I definitely need them. With what's happening in Colorado and the opposition trying to spin things, that's why we need people like Russ and the information that he gives us. So I refer to that as kind of working your crowd. But there's something else that we also have to do, because in order to move policy, you've got to move your legislative bodies. At the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. You've got to do that. You guys have lobby days, right? So you have to participate in that. You might have to give up a day of fun in the sun with the summertime coming, and and go visit some legislators. Go hang out at the state capitol for a while. But before you do that, again, you have to arm yourself with the facts. You have to tell your story. You have to tell why you're interested. They do like to hear your personal stories, and then you have to tell them about the facts. And you know what? There's a strategy involved here. There's a strategy involved here. You always have to put your best foot forward. Your best foot forward. So don't show up at your state capitol baked. I'm serious, folks. I've seen people do it. Don't show up high. I hate wearing a suit, but I do it. You got to throw in a tie. If you don't want to cut your hair, at least pull it back, make it look good. I don't have that problem.
Me neither.
I early got my mustache. That was too much trouble too. So I just got rid of it all. There are other reports out there. Russ has great information. There are other reports out there that you should have in your arsenal. The ACLU has put out a great national report that came out in June about marijuana arrests across this country and disparity issues. During a collaborative effort with the ACLU and the NAACP in Maryland, we actually did a report specifically for the state of Maryland, so that we could narrow it down even more, because we're doing a lot of work in Annapolis, our state capital now, during a session. And here's an example of what happens when you do that. Now, the coalition that we established in Maryland, all those groups that I named earlier and more, they're part of that coalition, a smaller coalition to work on one individual state. And here's what we did. Last year, for our tax and regulate bill, we had 4 co-sponsors. 4. This year, 32. 32. We pounded the halls well before the session, during the session, and we let people know that we had a coalition, many groups, legal women voters, you name it. Unions. You know what? Because we're talking about jobs. Job creation. People who currently don't work becoming employed. So, again, the coalition building, working the halls of your state capitol, making the phone calls, writing the letters, sending the emails. If you really did the numbers on what it takes to move one of your representatives, the percentage is extremely, extremely low. And if you happen to be the one that, during the week before they had to make the vote on a particular piece of legislation, and if you happen to be one of the 20 who called in to say support it, who sent the email to say support it, you know what? Because there's probably not going to be 20 people in opposition. Numbers don't have to be that high. You just gotta do it. You just gotta get busy and do it. And you'll be surprised what it takes to move one of your policymakers. I'm going to begin to wrap this up talking about, see, I don't talk long. I try not to anymore, at least. My wife tells me different. It's usually a woman in a relationship who talks louder. It's not a sexism like that. The opposition. Right now, and from what I'm seeing and what I saw in Annapolis as we tried to move this legislation in Maryland this year, the strongest opposition by far, there's not many left, is still law enforcement, unfortunately. And just so people know, I haven't become anti-law enforcement. I am very much pro-law enforcement. But I am pro-law enforcement for what it should be, not what it is. Law enforcement should be part of the community, an intricate part of every neighborhood and community on a positive level. Law enforcement should be staffed with people that the average citizen anytime can walk up to, strike up a conversation, get some good information, and get some help when they need it. Duh. So simple. But why isn't law enforcement like that? Why is it that the average child today wants nothing to do with law enforcement? A law enforcement career, they don't want a law enforcement career, they don't even want to interact with the police. Why is it when I occasionally get pulled over that what little hair I have stands up on the back of my neck? Shouldn't be that way. I know if it's that way for me, for the average citizen, oh my God, it's got to be horrifying. The average person who is dealing with addiction should be able to walk up to the average police officer on the street and say, Officer so-and-so, you know what? I'm challenged with this addiction and I need some help. That officer should be able to guide that individual as to where they can go, give them some information, maybe a phone number, maybe a contact name. And when that person does go to make that contact, you know what? The money is there for the on-demand treatment that they need. That's what we should be expecting. One example of what we should be expecting from our law enforcement community. We should be expecting that when a cop does show up for a call for service and things are a little haywire, everything from an automobile accident to a serious assault to a rape to a domestic violence incident, that when they show up, calmness shows up. Calm. And people feel the calmness. And they know that things are going to improve, not escalate. So let's talk a little bit about why law enforcement seems to be, is that barrier for us moving forward with drug policy reform. We talk about three basic things. These are what I see as the three basic things, and I think you need to know this. So when you have those opportunities to interact with law enforcement about this issue, or when you're down in your state capital talking about this issue and law enforcement is part of the conversation. So let me begin with the federal grants. We in law enforcement still receive a lot of federal dollars for drug enforcement. Everything from gang-related drug enforcement to marijuana eradication programs. That's what my sheriff in my county is going to use the helicopter for. marijuana eradication and whatever. In order to fill out an application and have that application be responsible for you getting more dollars, one of the pieces of criteria that is extremely important are arrests, drug arrests. The quality of that arrest is not important. It's literally a hash mark. Russ talked about close to 700,000 marijuana arrests every year in this country. Those are the easiest arrests for law enforcement to make. Drug-related arrests. Easiest arrests, period. Even including other crimes. So it's a hash mark. Every time we make a marijuana arrest, it's a hash mark. It's a hash mark. It's a hash mark. And we get millions and millions and millions of dollars. When I was the head of human resources for the Baltimore Police Department, I had a team, and their job was to find the federal dollars. They were grant writers. They would tell us what they needed to write the best possible grant. And one of those pieces of criteria is drug arrest. Number two, which also involves money, civil asset forfeit. That's how my sheriff is going to pay for the annual operation of the helicopter. We got it for free, but they're not cheap to operate. So the task force, the drug task force in my county, Harford County, is going to go out there and make arrests and seize money and seize property. You know, when I was the Northeast Regional Commander for the Bureau of Drug and Criminal Enforcement, and this still rings true today, each county, I had 9 at that time, each county had a drug task force. Sheriff's Department, Maryland State Police, local police departments, city cops, prosecutor's office, and maybe even a DEA agent. These different departments, we gave a body. We'll give you a body. Okay, here's a body, here's a person to work on that task force. But the operating costs, the daily operating costs, that came from civil asset forfeiture dollars. So in order to keep that task force running, we need to seize your money, your property, your cars. And if you just go on the internet, you can see case after case after case after case of people having their money taken and never even being charged with a crime. Literally, highway robbery. Highway robbery. That's number two. Number three, which it's not tied to money so much, but I believe it is probably the most significant reason that law enforcement is still so much in opposition to this. Think about how long this drug war has been in effect for so long. I mean, going on 5 decades, right? We crossed the 4-decade threshold, and now we're pushing on 5 decades. Just about every cop in the business today has been part of that 4-decade-long war on drugs. Drug enforcement today is about 70 to 75% of everything we do in the business. Think about it. You can begin with the number of marijuana arrests that we make all the time. Highway interdiction. If you're in any major city like Atlanta, one of the major priorities in many of our impoverished communities is to clear those corners. Clear corners. Get those drug dealers off of the corners. Sting operations. Search warrant after search warrant after search warrant. The violent crime that we had, the shootings, the running gun battles, the drive-by shootings, the murders, if they're not directly from feuding gangs and crews, maybe it's a witness intimidation or a shooting. Stop snitching, retaliation, and on and on and on. The Dawson family who was killed, they weren't part of the gang. 7 casualties right there in one night. some of the vehicles and cars that are stolen to help traffic drugs. You know, you don't want to use your own car, so you steal a car. Swap the tags on it, dump it wherever you want. I mean, crime after crime after crime. What about the people who are addicted to drugs like heroin and meth and cocaine and go out and commit robberies and burglaries and car thefts and on and on and on? 70 to 75% of what we do in law enforcement is somehow tied to this thing of the drug war. And after 4 decades, you know what? That's become our identity, folks. That's who we are now. That's what we do. But not just as an industry, not just for a department, but it's an identity for us individually. I think of the most outspoken sheriff in Maryland who has been opposed to what we're trying to do with tax and regulating marijuana in Maryland right now. The most outspoken, he used to be a sergeant with the Maryland State Police. And now he's a sheriff, Sheriff Lewis. You know, in a sense, I don't blame him for this. Because he grew up in this culture as a state trooper on the eastern shore of Maryland, and he quickly became a drug interdiction, highway interdiction expert. So he's out there every day on Route 13, stopping car after car after car. He became an expert at finding hidden compartments for marijuana, for cocaine, for heroin, you name it. He started traveling the country teaching on this topic. Award after award after award. It's who he is. He's known across the globe for the work that he's done. And now to come forward, what we're doing is say, you know what? We're taking your identity. What you did for the past 30 years is no longer important anymore. As a matter of fact, you know what? It was probably counterproductive to public safety, and you know what? It probably harms society more than anything else you do. That's a tough pill to swallow. I still have a bitter taste in my mouth. But I know I have to move forward. So what does that mean? That means we have to communicate. We have to develop. We have to engineer a new identity for our nation's law enforcement community. One of true public safety. One of addressing crimes of violence like murder, rape, domestic violence, crimes against our children. We have to let them know where we want them to be and what they're doing. Exactly how we do that, I'm not really certain yet, but it's going to involve a lot of communication, it's going to involve a lot of work, but that's what we need to do. Because for them, it's like someone coming up to you and saying, we're going to have to change your name. We're going to have to change your identity. We're going to have to move you from here to there. I don't know, it might be okay with some people, but for most, it's not. So, what's next? What's next for us and what we're doing in this wonderful movement that we have? I think we all know. We continue with a laser focus, a collaborative.
All right. Well, thanks again to Russ out there in Smyrna, Georgia. They're with Big Daddy Fink, Timmy Harris, having a great time. Russ will be back in the studio tomorrow for a live Russ Belville show. And stay tuned. Coming up next, we've got Free Weed with Danny Danko. Yeah, episode 59. So check that out. No live Red Eyes Reggae Flashback tonight. I gotta spend some time with a friend. But check out the replay. For everybody here at 420radio.org, until next time, take care of each other, Toker.
This is the Russ Belville Show.
And big thanks to Brightside PDX.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes.